Hi, everyone. Today, I want to share something that I know many of you struggle with: the fear of speaking English. Believe me, I've been there. I know how it feels when your mind goes blank in a conversation, when you worry about making mistakes, when your heart races just because you have to speak in English. But guess what? I overcame that fear, and today, I speak English with confidence. It wasn't easy, but I learned some powerful techniques that changed everything for me. And in this video, I'll tell you exactly what I did, step by step, so that you can do it too. If you're struggling with speaking English confidently, stay with me because this is going to be life-changing. All right, let's dive in. 1. Understanding the fear. Why are we so scared? First, let's talk about why we feel scared to speak English. If you've ever felt nervous, embarrassed, or even avoided situations where you had to speak English, it's totally normal. I used to do the same thing. For me, the fear came from three main things: fear of making mistakes. I was scared people would laugh at me or judge me. Fear of not finding the right words. I worried that I wouldn't know what to say. Lack of confidence. I felt like my English wasn't good enough. Does this sound familiar? If yes, don't worry. The good news is you can overcome all of this, and I'm going to show you how. 2. Changing my mindset. The game changer, the first big change I made, was in my mindset. Instead of thinking, I'm bad at English, I started telling myself, I'm learning English, and every time I speak, I get better. Here's what I did. I accepted that making mistakes is part of learning. Think about kids learning to talk. Do they speak perfectly from the start? No. They make mistakes, but they keep going. That's how we learn. I stopped worrying about what others think. Most people don't care if your English isn't perfect. And those who do, well, they're not worth your attention. I focused on progress, not perfection. I reminded myself that every conversation was practice, and I was improving step by step. This mindset shift made a huge difference. But I didn't stop there. I also used some practical techniques that built my confidence. 3. Talking to myself, my first step. One of the best things I did was talking to myself in English. Yes, it sounds funny, but it worked. I would describe my day out loud. Example: I'm making tea. It's hot. It smells good. Talk to myself in the mirror. This helped me feel comfortable seeing myself speak English. Pretend I was in a conversation. I'd imagine someone asking me a question and I'd answer. At first, it felt weird, but soon, I got used to hearing my own voice in English, and I stopped feeling nervous. 4. Speaking with real people. The big leap. The next step was actually talking to real people in English. This was scary at first, but I found ways to make it easier. I started with texts and voice messages. Instead of direct conversations, I practiced by sending voice notes to my friends. This helped me get used to speaking without pressure. I joined English-speaking groups online. There are so many Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups, and Discord servers where people practice English. I made new friends and practiced with them. I spoke slowly and clearly. I realized that speaking slowly made me feel more in control. It's not about speed, it's about being understood. The more I spoke, the less nervous I felt. 5. Using the Think in English technique. One thing that helped me a lot was thinking in English. Before, I used to translate everything in my head from my native language to English, but that made speaking so slow. So I trained my brain to think directly in English by naming objects in English. Example: oh, that's a chair. This is my phone. Making small sentences in my head throughout the day. Example: I need to buy milk today. Watching movies and imagining I was part of the conversation. At first, it was hard, but after a few weeks, it became natural. 6. Shadowing, copying native speakers. Another powerful technique I used was shadowing. This means listening to native speakers and copying their way of speaking. I did this by watching YouTube videos and repeating what they said, listening to podcasts and speaking along with them, watching TV shows with subtitles and mimicking the dialogue. It helped me improve my pronunciation and fluency fast. 7. Practicing every day. The key to confidence. I realized that speaking is a skill, like riding a bike or playing an instrument. The more I practiced, the better I got. I made a rule for myself. Every day, I must speak at least 10 minutes in English. Some days, I talked to my friends. Other days, I just spoke to myself. But I never skipped a day. And you know what? After a few months, I started feeling comfortable and confident in English. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that every conversation is an opportunity for growth. I started treating every chat, no matter how short or casual, as a little victory. When I first began, I was so scared of making mistakes that I'd avoid speaking altogether. But over time, I realized that mistakes are simply part of the process. Every time I misspoke or hesitated, I took a moment afterward to think, what can I learn from this? Instead of feeling embarrassed, I began to see those moments as little stepping stones toward improvement. One technique that really helped me was recording my voice. I know it sounds a bit odd, but trust me, it was a game changer. I started recording myself talking about anything, narrating my day, reading a favorite passage from a book, or even practicing tongue twisters. Later, I would listen to these recordings, not to judge myself harshly, but to notice the progress I was making. I could hear how my pronunciation got clearer, and my confidence grew. This self-reflection became a source of motivation every single day. There were also times when I would invite a friend over for a coffee chat, and we'd switch to English for just 15 or 20 minutes. These low-pressure environments made a huge difference because they allowed me to practice without the fear of being judged. It's amazing how much more comfortable you can feel when you're with someone who understands what you're going through and is willing to help you practice. I remember one friend who patiently listened to me, offering gentle corrections and encouraging words. That kindness made me want to keep trying, even on days when I felt like I was taking 2 steps back for every step forward. Another thing that really boosted my confidence was joining online communities of English learners. There are so many fantastic groups on social media platforms and language learning forums where people share their stories, tips, and even laugh at their own mistakes. In these communities, I found a safe space where everyone was on the same journey. We'd organize video calls, voice chats, and even virtual meetups where we discussed different topics. The best part? No one was perfect, and that acceptance made it easier for me to let go of my fear. Instead of worrying about sounding wrong, I learned to focus on conveying my thoughts and enjoying the conversation. I also found that setting small, realistic goals made a big difference. In the beginning, I challenged myself to have just one short conversation in English each day. It might have been as simple as ordering a meal at a cafe or asking a question in a group chat. Each of these moments built up my confidence little by little. Over time, those small goals expanded into longer conversations, and eventually, I was comfortable engaging in discussions with native speakers. The key was consistency. Every day, even if it was just for a few minutes, I made sure to practice. On days when I felt extra anxious, I used mindfulness and relaxation techniques to help center myself. A few deep breaths before speaking can work wonders. I'd close my eyes for a moment, take in a deep breath, and remind myself that I'm doing this for me. That simple pause helped clear my mind and eased the tension in my body. I even started practicing meditation a little, which helped me stay calm in situations where I had to speak in front of larger groups. Sometimes I pushed myself out of my comfort zone by taking part in activities that were completely new to me. One memorable experience was when I signed up for an open mic event at a local cafe. I prepared a short story about my journey with English and rehearsed it over and over. When I finally stepped up to the microphone, my heart was pounding, but I remembered all the practice and the supportive words from my friends and online community. And you know what? It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was mine. The applause at the end of my story wasn't just for the words I said, it was for the courage I mustered to face my fears head on. That day, I learned that every time you step into the spotlight, even if you're a little nervous, you're proving to yourself that you can do it. I also began to see language learning as an adventure rather than a chore. I made it a habit to watch movies and TV shows in English, not just with subtitles, but actively engaging with the dialogue. I'd pause, rewind, and repeat interesting lines until they felt natural to me. I started following YouTube channels where native speakers discussed topics I was passionate about. This wasn't just about learning new vocabulary or phrases. It was about immersing myself in the culture and rhythm of the language. Over time, I noticed that the way I spoke began to mirror the natural flow of the language I was exposed to. I even found myself thinking in English during the day, which made it easier when it came time to speak. One of my favorite practices was the shadowing technique. I'd pick a short clip from a movie or a speech, listen to a sentence, and then immediately try to repeat it as accurately as possible. This wasn't about perfection, it was about training my ear and my mouth to work together in a new way. At first, it was challenging to keep up, but gradually my pace improved. The rhythm and intonation of English started to feel like second nature. It was like learning a dance. Once you get the steps right, everything flows together. I also want to share a little secret. I learned a lot from just letting go. There was a time when I was so worried about every word and every accent that I was paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. Then one day, I decided to just let go of that inner critic. I told myself, it's okay to be imperfect, it's okay to stumble. And just like that, I started to relax. When you stop trying to be flawless, you allow your natural self to shine through. Your voice becomes more genuine, and the conversation turns into a beautiful exchange of ideas, not a performance that you have to perfect. I remember a particular conversation where I was discussing a topic I was really passionate about, a hobby I had recently picked up. I was so excited that I forgot about the fear entirely. I spoke naturally, with enthusiasm and genuine curiosity. The person I was talking to was equally engaged, and we ended up having a long, delightful conversation. That moment reminded me that passion and authenticity are much more important than a flawless accent or perfect grammar. When you speak with heart, people understand you, and that connection is what truly matters. There were also days when, despite all the progress, I'd feel a pang of self-doubt. In those moments, I'd reflect on how far I had come. I'd look back at recordings of my early attempts and see the difference. It wasn't just about speaking better, it was about growing as a person. I realized that every struggle, every moment of hesitation, was a part of my unique journey. I started writing in a journal, not just in English, but reflecting on my thoughts and feelings about the learning process. Writing helped me process my emotions and served as a tangible record of my progress. Whenever I felt discouraged, I'd read through those pages and feel a surge of pride for having overcome so much. Another important aspect was seeking feedback. I actively asked for constructive criticism from people I trusted. Initially, it was daunting to hear about my mispronunciations or grammar errors, but I learned to see feedback as a gift. Each piece of advice was an opportunity to refine my skills. Over time, I built a network of supportive friends, mentors, and fellow learners who were all invested in helping each other improve. Their honest insights helped me pinpoint areas that needed work, and I embraced those challenges with determination. My journey also led me to discover the importance of cultural context. English isn't just a language, it's a bridge that connects people from different parts of the world. By understanding cultural nuances, like humor, body language, and context, I started to communicate more effectively. I began watching documentaries, listening to podcasts, and reading books that explored the cultural backdrop of English speaking countries. This deeper understanding enriched my conversations and made me more confident in social settings. I learned that language is as much about cultural expression as it is about words, and embracing that made my interactions more vibrant and meaningful. One particularly transformational experience was when I traveled to an English speaking country. Being immersed in an environment where English was everywhere forced me to step out of my comfort zone completely. I had to navigate everyday situations, from ordering food at a restaurant to asking for directions on busy streets. Initially, I felt overwhelmed, but I gradually adapted. Every interaction was a lesson in real life communication, and slowly but surely, my confidence soared. It wasn't just about learning the language, it was about embracing a new way of life, and every conversation became a reminder that I was capable of more than I ever imagined. As I continued to practice and immerse myself in different experiences, I began to see a profound change within me. I started enjoying conversations, even when they were challenging or unpredictable. I learned to appreciate the beauty of spontaneous dialogue and the unique connections that form when people truly listen to each other. It was no longer about speaking perfectly, it was about sharing parts of myself and building genuine relationships. And that, I realized, is the true essence of communication. I want to emphasize that your journey is entirely personal. What works for me might not work for you, and that's perfectly okay. The important thing is to experiment and discover what techniques make you feel most at ease. Whether it's recording yourself, practicing shadowing, joining an online community, or even just speaking out loud while you're alone, every little step counts. Remember, progress is progress, no matter how small. One thing that kept me grounded was celebrating the little victories. Every time I successfully held a conversation or managed to express an idea clearly, I made it a point to acknowledge that success. I'd treat myself to something nice, a little reward that served as a reminder of how far I'd come. Celebrating these moments made the journey not only bearable, but truly enjoyable. It's easy to get caught up in the challenges, but when you focus on the progress, you start to see that every conversation is a step forward. I also found that mixing up my routine kept the excitement alive. There were days when I'd focus on intensive speaking practice with a language partner, and other days when I'd watch a movie in English or read a short story out loud. This variety not only made the process fun, but also helped me adapt to different styles of communication. Some days, I'd even set up mini challenges for myself, like trying to explain a complex idea in simple words or telling a joke in English. These challenges pushed me out of my comfort zone and showed me that language can be playful, creative, and endlessly rewarding. As I reflect on my journey, I realize that overcoming the fear of speaking English wasn't just about learning a language. It was about rediscovering my inner strength. I learned that the voice inside me, once silenced by fear and self-doubt, could grow into a confident, expressive, and vibrant part of who I am. I learned to embrace every moment of imperfection as a sign of progress, to see every mistake as a lesson rather than a failure, and to trust that every conversation was shaping me into the person I aspired to be. For anyone out there still struggling with fear or hesitation, I want you to know that it's all right to feel that way. It's perfectly normal to be nervous when stepping into something new, but every time you decide to speak, you're taking control of your story. You're saying, I have something to share, and I'm not afraid to share it. And that is incredibly powerful. So take a deep breath, muster your courage, and speak your truth. Don't worry about having the perfect accent or flawless grammar. Those things will come with time. What matters most is your willingness to communicate, to connect, and to grow. Each day is a new opportunity to overcome your fears, to push a little further outside your comfort zone, and to celebrate the unique voice that is all your own. I truly believe that every person has a story worth telling, and every story becomes richer when it's shared. By speaking English, you're not just learning a language, you're opening yourself up to a world of opportunities, friendships, and experiences that you might have never imagined. So go ahead, embrace the journey with all its ups and downs, knowing that every step forward is a victory in itself. Thank you for joining me as I share my journey and the many ways I built the confidence to speak English. I hope that by sharing my experiences, I've given you some practical tips and the inspiration to start or continue your own journey. Remember, it doesn't matter how slow you go. As long as you keep moving forward, you're making progress. Before I wrap up, I just want to leave you with one final thought. The road to fluency isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. There will be moments when you feel stuck, and that's perfectly normal. In those moments, remember how far you've come and know that each conversation, each interaction, is a building block of your future confidence. You have the power to overcome your fears and become the fluent, confident speaker you want to be. And there's another part of my journey that I want to share, one that really transformed how I approached learning and speaking English every single day. I began to notice that one of the most powerful tools I had was simply my willingness to embrace vulnerability. There were times when I would purposely put myself in situations where I had to speak English, even if I wasn't entirely comfortable. For example, I joined a local meetup group for language exchange. I remember walking into that first meeting, feeling like my heart was going to burst out of my chest, but I pushed myself to introduce myself in English. I stumbled over my words a few times, laughed at my own mistakes, and even received some playful teasing from the group. Yet, instead of feeling embarrassed, I started to see those moments as badges of honor, proof that I was stepping outside of my comfort zone and daring to try. Over time, these meetups became a highlight of my week. I began to look forward to meeting new people and hearing their stories. It wasn't just about practicing English, it was about connecting with others, sharing a laugh over a mispronounced word, or even bonding over the shared experience of learning something new. In that group, everyone was supportive, and every conversation was a reminder that perfection isn't required to communicate effectively. I started to see that my voice, with all its quirks and imperfections, had value. And the more I embraced that, the more my confidence grew. Another breakthrough came when I decided to get creative with my practice. I began to incorporate my love for music into my learning routine. I'd pick an English song that I loved, and instead of just listening to it, I'd learn the lyrics, sing along, and even try to understand the story behind the song. Sometimes I'd even record myself singing or speaking along to the lyrics. This wasn't just fun, it was a fantastic exercise in rhythm, pronunciation, and intonation. Music has a way of making language feel more natural and less rigid. And before I knew it, I was humming in English throughout the day, which not only boosted my vocabulary, but also made me more comfortable with the sound of my own voice. I also discovered that interacting with media in English could be a treasure trove of learning opportunities. I started watching movies and series without subtitles, which forced me to rely on my listening skills and contextual clues. At first, it was challenging. I'd often rewind and rewatch scenes, trying to catch every word. But gradually, I found that I was starting to understand more and more without needing to pause. It was like my brain was finally tuning into the natural flow of the language. I even made it a habit to jot down new phrases or interesting expressions I heard and try to incorporate them into my daily conversations. One of the most unexpected, yet transformative experiences was when I participated in a storytelling workshop conducted entirely in English. The idea was to share personal stories in a supportive environment, and I decided to talk about my initial struggles with speaking English. Standing in front of a small audience and recounting my journey was nerve-wracking at first. However, as I shared my story, the stumbles, the breakthroughs, the moments of pure joy, I felt an overwhelming sense of release. I realized that every mistake and every moment of hesitation had led me to that very point of strength. The audience's response was heartwarming. I saw nods, smiles, and even heard words of encouragement. That day, I learned that storytelling in English was not just a language exercise, but a profound way to connect with people and empower myself. Sometimes I'd also set aside time to write down my thoughts in English. I wasn't writing essays or preparing for exams. I was journaling my experiences, my feelings, and even my fears. Writing allowed me to process my thoughts and see how far I'd come. I'd reread my old entries and laugh at the nervous, halting sentences of the past. It was like looking at a timeline of growth. This practice not only improved my writing skills, but also gave me a quiet moment to reflect on my personal evolution as a speaker of English. There were days when I still felt that old, familiar anxiety creeping in. In those moments, I'd remind myself that every expert was once a beginner. I'd think back to the early days when speaking English felt impossible, and I'd marvel at the progress I had made, even if it was just a little bit. I started to celebrate those small victories, like successfully ordering a meal in English or having a short chat with a stranger on the bus. Each of these moments became a stepping stone, gradually building my confidence and pushing the boundaries of what I thought I could achieve. One of the most liberating realizations I had was that the pressure to speak perfectly was something I had imposed on myself. I learned to silence that inner critic, a voice that was always quick to point out every flaw. Instead of fixating on what I hadn't mastered yet, I began to focus on what I was doing well. Every time I spoke, I was communicating, connecting, and learning. I reminded myself that the goal wasn't to be flawless, but to be understood and to connect on a human level. This shift in perspective turned what used to be a paralyzing fear into a playful exploration of language. I remember a particularly challenging day when I had an important meeting in English for the first time at work. I felt a wave of panic as the moment approached, but I took a few deep breaths and reminded myself of all the techniques I had practiced over the years. I entered the meeting with a quiet confidence, focusing on the message I wanted to convey rather than the perfection of my language. And you know what? The meeting went smoothly. I managed to express my ideas clearly, and the response from my colleagues was positive. That day, I realized that the fear was slowly losing its grip on me, replaced by a newfound confidence that came from continuous practice and self-belief. Another key moment in my journey was when I decided to challenge myself with impromptu speaking exercises. I would randomly pick topics from a jar I had made, topics ranging from the importance of kindness to my favorite travel experience, and speak about them for a few minutes. These exercises were initially intimidating because I had no time to prepare, but they forced me to think on my feet. Over time, I noticed that my ability to articulate my thoughts improved dramatically. I learned that spontaneity could be a friend rather than a foe, and that I was capable of organizing my ideas even under pressure. It wasn't just about the structured exercises either. There were spontaneous moments in daily life that became golden opportunities for practice. Whether I was chatting with a barista about the weather or asking for directions in a bustling market, every conversation was a chance to use English in a real-world context. These interactions, though brief, played a crucial role in reshaping my confidence. I learned that English was not just an academic subject, but a vibrant, living language that was part of everyday life. Looking back, I'm so grateful for every step of this journey. Overcoming the fear of speaking English wasn't just about mastering a language. It was about discovering parts of myself I never knew existed. It taught me resilience, patience, and the importance of self-compassion. I learned that it's perfectly fine to stumble and fall, as long as you keep getting up and moving forward. To anyone watching this and feeling overwhelmed by the thought of speaking in English, please remember, every single word you speak is progress. Every conversation, no matter how short or imperfect, is a victory. Embrace your mistakes. They're the stepping stones to fluency. And above all, be kind to yourself. Learning a language is a journey filled with ups and downs, but every step you take is a step toward becoming a more confident, authentic version of yourself. As I continue on this journey, I remind myself that the process of learning is never truly finished. There will always be new words to learn, new expressions to master, and new conversations to have. And that's what makes it exciting. Each day brings a fresh opportunity to learn, to grow, and to share your unique voice with the world. So, let's keep pushing forward together. Keep practicing, keep engaging with people, and most importantly, keep believing in your ability to overcome your fears. Your journey is unique, and every effort you make is a triumph worth celebrating. And there's more I want to share with you about my journey, because even as I've grown more confident, I've discovered that learning to speak English with ease is an ongoing adventure. There were times when I would wake up feeling excited about the day ahead, knowing that every conversation was a chance to practice and improve. I started to look forward to those little moments of connection, whether it was chatting with a neighbor, engaging in a lively discussion with colleagues, or simply ordering my favorite coffee at the local cafe. Each interaction, however small, felt like a tiny celebration of my progress. I also learned to trust my instincts and listen to my inner voice, which gradually became stronger with every step I took. In the early days, I would second guess myself constantly, wondering if I was using the right word or if my pronunciation was off. But over time, I began to understand that language is not about perfection, it's about expression. I embraced the idea that it was okay to be imperfect, because every word I spoke was an honest expression of who I was at that moment. Sometimes I'd set aside moments of quiet reflection, sitting in a cozy corner with a warm cup of tea, and simply think about all the conversations I had during the day. I'd recall the laughter, the moments of awkwardness, and the little triumphs where I managed to get my point across despite my fears. It was in these quiet moments that I realized how much I had grown, not just in my language skills, but as a person who wasn't afraid to take risks. One of the most transformative practices I embraced was the art of pausing. In the midst of a conversation, rather than rushing to fill the silence or worry about what to say next, I allowed myself to take a breath. I learned that a thoughtful pause could add weight to my words and give me a moment to organize my thoughts. This simple act of pausing transformed my interactions, making them feel more natural and less pressured. It taught me that silence is not something to be feared, but rather a powerful tool in communication. I also found strength in reflecting on my failures as much as my successes. There were days when I would stumble over my words or get tangled in my sentences, and it would feel like a setback. But I started keeping a small notebook where I'd jot down those challenging moments along with what I had learned from them. Over time, those pages filled up with little insights, reminders that every mistake was simply a lesson in disguise. This practice helped me see my journey as a series of learning experiences, each one a necessary step toward becoming the confident speaker I aspired to be. Another key element was developing a sense of humor about my own quirks. I began to laugh at the small blunders, like when I mispronounced a word and ended up inventing a funny new term, and that laughter made the experience lighter and more enjoyable. I even shared these funny moments with friends, and it turned out that they too had stories of language mishaps. Realizing that everyone has these moments made me feel less isolated in my struggle and more connected to a global community of learners who all shared the same journey. I also started setting long-term goals for my language learning. Beyond just speaking confidently, I wanted to be able to express complex ideas, engage in deep conversations, and even give presentations in English. I broke these goals down into manageable steps. For example, I dedicated time to learning new vocabulary related to topics I was passionate about, such as literature, travel, and even my favorite hobbies. I challenged myself to read books, watch documentaries, and write essays on subjects that intrigued me. Each new word or phrase I learned became a building block, gradually constructing a richer and more expressive way of communicating. At times, the journey felt overwhelming. There were days when the sheer volume of what I needed to learn seemed insurmountable. In those moments, I reminded myself that language is a living, breathing entity that evolves with time and practice. I took solace in the fact that every native speaker was once a learner too. I reached out to mentors, participated in online workshops, and even attended local seminars. These experiences not only broadened my knowledge, but also introduced me to a network of people who were just as dedicated to improving their English as I was. One of the most heartwarming parts of my journey was the realization that teaching others helped me learn even more. When I started sharing my tips and techniques with fellow learners, whether it was through casual conversations or by creating small study groups, I found that explaining concepts and strategies reinforced my own understanding. It was a beautiful cycle of learning and teaching. I remember one evening, during an impromptu study session, a friend mentioned how my approach to practicing shadowing had helped her grasp the natural rhythm of English. Hearing that made me feel like my struggles and breakthroughs weren't just personal victories, they were gifts I could pass on. The journey also taught me to appreciate the nuances of English, the idioms, the cultural references, the humor that often gets lost in translation. I began exploring literature and films that highlighted these nuances, and I made it a point to ask native speakers about expressions or phrases that puzzled me. This curiosity not only expanded my vocabulary, but also deepened my understanding of the cultural fabric that shapes the language. I learned that language is not just about grammar and vocabulary. It's about the stories and traditions that make each conversation a reflection of a rich heritage. And then there were those magical moments when everything seemed to click. I recall a day when I was having a conversation with someone who was a native speaker, and for the first time, I wasn't overthinking every word. I felt a natural flow in our dialogue, a rhythm that made me realize that I was no longer trapped by my fears. It was as if the barriers that once held me back had dissolved, leaving me free to express my thoughts and feelings with clarity and confidence. In that moment, I understood that the journey wasn't about becoming perfect, it was about becoming authentic. Every step of this journey has reinforced a vital truth. Growth happens when we step outside our comfort zones. It wasn't always easy, and there were times when I wanted to give up. But each challenge I faced became an opportunity to build resilience and discover a deeper well of strength within myself. I learned to embrace the unknown, to welcome uncertainty as part of the adventure, and to see every conversation as a canvas on which I could paint my thoughts in vibrant, imperfect strokes. As I stand here today, reflecting on how far I've come, I realize that the fear of speaking English has been transformed into a source of empowerment. The journey has not ended. It's ongoing, ever evolving, and filled with endless possibilities. I continue to learn new expressions, meet new people, and explore new cultural dimensions of the language. And every day, I remind myself that each word spoken, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, contributes to a larger story of personal triumph. I want to leave you with this thought: your voice matters. Every time you speak, you add your unique perspective to the global conversation. Don't let the fear of mistakes or the pressure of perfection hold you back. Instead, let each conversation be a testament to your courage and your commitment to growing as a person. Embrace the journey with all its ups and downs, knowing that every moment is a stepping stone toward becoming the confident, expressive individual you are meant to be. Imagine a future where you can speak English effortlessly, not because you've mastered every rule, but because you've learned to express your true self without hesitation. Picture yourself engaging in deep conversations, sharing your ideas with passion, and connecting with people from all walks of life. That future is within your reach, and it begins with the decision to take that first brave step every single day. So, let's continue to support each other on this journey. Share your experiences, celebrate your victories, and learn from your setbacks. Remember that every mistake is a lesson, every conversation a milestone, and every moment of courage a reason to smile. Together, we can create a community where everyone feels empowered to speak their truth, to learn from one another, and to grow in ways we never thought possible. As I wrap up today's session, I want you to know that I'm incredibly proud of every step you take toward overcoming your fears. I believe in your ability to transform challenges into opportunities and to let your authentic voice shine through. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and above all, keep speaking, because the world needs to hear your unique story. Thank you for listening, for being part of this incredible journey, and for taking the brave steps to improve your English. I hope that my story has inspired you to face your fears with a renewed sense of determination and optimism. Remember, confidence is not built overnight, but with every conversation, every word, and every shared experience, you are creating a legacy of growth and courage. Until we meet again, keep believing in yourself, keep pushing your limits, and keep celebrating the beauty of your own voice. Happy speaking, and may your journey be filled with endless learning and joy. Some powerful tips and tricks that helped me build confidence. These are techniques I personally used, and I'll explain everything in full detail so you can understand how to apply them in your own journey. 1. Change your mindset. Confidence comes from action. One of the biggest obstacles to speaking English confidently is our own mindset. Many learners, including me, struggle because we think, I'm not good enough. What if I make mistakes? People will laugh at me. These thoughts create fear and hesitation. But the truth is, confidence doesn't come before action, it comes after action. That means you don't need to be fluent before you speak. Instead, you need to speak first, and confidence will follow. How to change your mindset. Accept that mistakes are part of learning. Nobody speaks perfectly in the beginning. Even native speakers make mistakes. Remind yourself of your progress. Think about what you already know and focus on how far you've come instead of how much is left. Talk to yourself positively. Instead of saying, I'm bad at English, say, I'm improving every day. The more you practice, the more confident you will feel. Confidence is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. 2. Speak out loud. Even when you're alone, many people think they need someone to practice with, but you can practice by yourself every day. Techniques to speak alone. Self-talk. Talk to yourself about your day, your plans, or even your thoughts. Example: today I woke up at 7 a.m. I had a cup of coffee, and then I went for a walk. The weather was nice, and I felt happy. This simple practice will make your brain think in English naturally. Describe your surroundings. Look around your room and describe what you see. I see a blue chair. The chair is next to my table. On the table, there is a laptop. This helps you think in English and use new vocabulary. Record yourself. Use your phone to record your voice while speaking. Then, listen to it and analyze how you sound. Do you sound confident? Are you pausing too much? Adjust and improve. Read out loud. Pick a book, an article, or even a social media post and read it aloud. This helps improve pronunciation, fluency, and confidence. Speaking alone removes the fear of being judged and allows you to practice freely. Practice thinking in English. One major reason people struggle with speaking is that they first think in their native language and then translate into English. This process slows down speech and creates mistakes. How to train your brain to think in English. Start with simple thoughts. Instead of thinking, I need to buy vegetables, in your native language, and then translating, just think directly in English. I need to buy tomatoes and onions. Use English for daily activities. When making a shopping list, write it in English. When setting reminders on your phone, write them in English. Label things around you. Write the English names of items in your home on sticky notes and place them on objects. Example: refrigerator, instead of thinking in your native language. Mirror remote control. Ask yourself questions in English. What do I want to eat? Answer in English, I want a sandwich. The more you train your brain to think in English, the easier speaking will become. Fourth, shadowing technique. Copy native speakers. Shadowing is one of the best ways to improve fluency and pronunciation. It involves listening to native speakers and repeating their words exactly as they say them. How to do the shadowing technique. Choose an English podcast, speech, or YouTube video. Listen to a sentence and pause. Repeat the sentence exactly as you heard it, copying the speed, pronunciation, and tone. Continue with the next sentence. This technique helps you improve pronunciation, learn natural sentence rhythm, speak faster and more fluently. Start with slow and clear speakers, then move on to fast and natural conversations. 5. Join English conversations and speak with people. The best way to get over the fear of speaking is to actually speak with people. Where to find people to talk to. Language exchange apps. Use apps like HelloTalk, Tandem, or Speaky to find real people who want to practice English. Join online discussion groups. Platforms like Reddit, Quora, and Facebook have English learning communities where you can comment and discuss. Find a speaking partner. Ask a friend or family member who knows English to have small daily conversations with you. If speaking with strangers feels scary, start small. First, text in English. Then, do voice messages. Finally, try video calls. The more real conversations you have, the less fear you will feel. 6. Use the 3-second rule to reduce fear. Many people hesitate before speaking because they overthink. The longer you wait, the more fear builds up. The 3-second rule. When you want to speak, count 1, 2, 3, and start talking. Don't give yourself time to hesitate. If you force yourself to speak quickly, your brain won't have time to be afraid. This simple trick helped me a lot, especially when I was nervous about talking in a group. 7. Watch movies and mimic real-life conversations. Movies, TV shows, and interviews are great for learning how people naturally speak. How to use movies to improve speaking. Watch with English subtitles. Listen and read at the same time. Pause and repeat sentences. Try saying them exactly like the actors. Turn off subtitles. Once you feel comfortable, watch without subtitles and focus on listening. Some great movies and shows to start with: Friends, for casual conversations; The Social Network, for fast English; The King's Speech, for public speaking confidence. Mimicking real-life speech patterns will help you sound more natural and confident. 8. Create a habit. Speak English. Every day, to truly overcome fear, you must practice speaking every single day. It doesn't have to be long. Even 5 to 10 minutes is enough. How to build a daily habit. Morning routine. Describe your morning activities in English. Evening reflection. Talk about your day before going to bed. Set reminders. Use your phone to remind you to practice speaking. The key is consistency. Speaking English daily will train your brain to feel comfortable and confident. 9. Focus on communication, not perfection. Many learners hesitate to speak because they want to say everything perfectly. But here's the truth: fluency is more important than accuracy. Think about it. When you speak in your native language, do you always use perfect grammar? No. You focus on getting your message across, and that's exactly what you need to do in English. How to focus on communication. Don't stop mid-sentence to correct yourself. Just keep talking. Native speakers won't care about small mistakes. Use simple words. If you don't know a difficult word, explain it in a different way. Example: if you forget the word refrigerator, you can say the place where we keep food cold. Use body language and facial expressions. Communication is not just words. Smile, nod, and use hand gestures to help express your ideas. The goal is to be understood, not to be perfect. So, just speak naturally without fear. 10. Learn sentence patterns instead of just vocabulary. One mistake I made in the beginning was memorizing individual words instead of learning sentence structures. The problem? Knowing words doesn't help you speak fluently, but knowing how to use them in sentences does.